I've been a private investigator for 15 years, mostly routine stuff, insurance fraud, cheating spouses, corporate espionage. The cases that keep the lights on but don't keep you up at night. That changed when Margaret Thorne walked into my office 3 days after Christmas, clutching a crumpled Macy's shopping bag like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. My name is August Reed. I operate out of a small office in Providence, Rhode Island, and I'm about to tell you about the case that made me seriously consider burning my PI license and opening a coffee shop somewhere quiet, somewhere far from the East Coast, somewhere where children don't disappear. Mrs. Thorne was a composed woman, early 40s, with the kind of rigid posture that speaks of old money and private schools. But her hands shook as she placed 2 school photos on my desk. Kiernan and Brynn Thorne, identical twins, 7 years old. Both had striking auburn hair and those peculiar pale green eyes you sometimes see in Irish families. They vanished at the Providence Place Mall, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. December 22nd, between 2:17 and 2:24 p.m., 7 minutes. I only looked away for 7 minutes. I'd seen the news coverage, of course, twin children disappearing during Christmas shopping. It was the kind of story that dominated local headlines. The police had conducted an extensive search, but so far had turned up nothing. Mall security footage showed the twins entering the toy store with their mother but never leaving. It was as if they'd simply evaporated. Mrs. Thorne, I began carefully, I understand that the police are actively investigating. They're looking in the wrong places, she cut me off. They're treating this like an isolated incident. It's not. She reached into her bag and pulled out a manila folder, spreading its contents across my desk. Newspaper clippings, printouts from news websites, handwritten notes. 1994, twin boys, age 7, disappeared from a shopping center in Baltimore. 2001, twin girls, age 7, vanished from a department store in Burlington, Vermont. 2008, another set of twins, boys, age 7, last seen at a strip mall in Augusta, Maine. Her finger stabbed at each article. 2015, twin girls? All twins? I interrupted, leaning forward. All age 7? She nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. Always during the Christmas shopping season, always in the northeastern United States, always 7-year-old twins. The police say I'm seeing patterns where there aren't any, that I'm a grieving mother grasping at straws. I studied the articles more closely. The similarities were unsettling. Each case remained unsolved. No bodies ever found, no ransom demands, no credible leads, just children vanishing into thin air while their parents' backs were turned. I took the case. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've driven thousands of miles, interviewed dozens of families, and filled 3 notebooks with observations and theories. I've also started sleeping with my lights on, double-checking my locks, and jumping at shadows. Because what I've found, what I'm still finding, it's worse than anything you can imagine. The pattern goes back further than Mrs. Thorne knew, much further. I've traced similar disappearances back to 1952, though the early cases are harder to verify. Always twins, always 7 years old, always during the Christmas shopping season, but that's just the surface pattern, the obvious one. There are other connections, subtle details that make my skin crawl when I think about them too long. In each case, security cameras malfunction at crucial moments, not obviously, no sudden static or blank screens. The footage just becomes subtly corrupted, faces blurred just enough to be useless, timestamps skipping microseconds at critical moments every single time. Then there are the witnesses. In each case, at least one person recalls seeing the children leaving the store or mall with their parent. But the descriptions of this parent never match the actual parents, and yet they're also never quite consistent enough to build a reliable profile. Tall, but not too tall. Average looking, I think. Wearing a dark coat, or maybe it was blue. It's like trying to describe someone you saw in a dream. But the detail that keeps me up at night, in every single case, in the weeks leading up to the disappearance, someone reported seeing the twins playing with matchboxes. Not matchbox cars, actual matchboxes, empty ones. Different witnesses, different occasions, but always the same detail. Children sliding empty matchboxes back and forth between them like some kind of game. The Thorne twins were no exception. Their babysitter mentioned it to me in passing, something she'd noticed but hadn't thought important enough to tell the police. They'd sit for hours, she said, pushing these old matchboxes across the coffee table to each other.